have some updates on the Trayvon Martin story. And, you know, yesterday when we covered this story, we were very, very suspicious and skeptical of the police department investigating the case because it didn't seem like they were alarmed by the fact that a 17-year-old boy who weighs 140 pounds was shot and killed by someone who's 26 years old or 28 years old, there are conflicting reports, and was armed, okay, shot in the chest. So, now it turns out that more witnesses are talking to ABC News and to other media outlets, and they're confirming that they're also skeptical of the way the police have handled the situation thus far. So I'll give you some exact examples. After the shooting, a source inside the police department told ABC News that a narcotics detective and not a homicide detective first approached Zimmerman, the shooter.
Okay, now, if you just have that, you might say, hey, you're nitpicking, so the wrong detective showed up. That isn't the main problem. The main problem is what they did when they did show up. Now, look at the assumptions when they go in. Assumption is, white guy's right, who had the gun. The dead kid, who weighs 140 pounds, 17 years old, got shot in the chest, is wrong, okay? So now, here comes a really bad part.
The detective peppered Zimmerman with questions rather than allow Zimmerman to tell his story. Questions can lead a witness, the source said. And this is someone within the police department.
Saying, hey, you know what, like, maybe you might want to answer it this way, like, that might help your self-defense case. Now, we're not saying that they went that far, but it's not the right way to approach it. And again, you might be thinking, well, you don't know that it was just an honest mistake or they did it on purpose to help him, right? Well, the last piece of the puzzle, I think, helps solve that.
Another officer corrected a witness after she told him she heard the teen cry for help. The officer told the witness, a longtime teacher, it was Zimmerman who cried for help, said the witness.
That's it. There it is. And to me, that was exactly indicative of what's wrong with the police in this entire investigation. They come in, they're like, okay, the white guy who shot the poor kid, well, he must be to have a squeaky clean record. And who cried for help? Oh, the witness is telling me the kid cried for help before he got shot. Because Zimmerman's whole defense is, I was under attack. Now, he's the one that called 911. 911 told him, do not pursue him. And by the way, we don't even know if he's suspicious. Zimmerman made up that he was suspicious. Turns out, of course, he wasn't suspicious. The only reason Zimmerman thought that, apparently, is because he's black, right? He wasn't armed. He had Skittles in his pocket. Nothing wrong. He was going to his dad's place in the gated community. So now the cop comes and tells the witness, no, you didn't hear the kid ask for help. You heard Zimmerman ask for help. No, end of this. That's it. No, the cops, at least some of them in this investigation, and I don't care if people aren't willing to say it. My job is to say the obvious. They're racist. If it was the role reversals we've said all along, you think, I mean, come on, look at all this stuff. If a black teenager had shot a 28-year-old white guy, you think the cop comes in, his automatic assumption is, teenager is squeaky clean, and it must have been him that was crying for help rather than the white guy who's got the bullet hole in his chest. No way they make that assumption. No way they lead the witnesses in that way. Come on, bounds of reason. And this is way, way outside the bounds of reason. Now, the state has taken over the case.
They have.
I think that we should also call for a federal investigation. You remember the Rodney King cops eventually went to a federal investigation because civil rights are involved. Civil rights here are involved as well because apparently the local police have very questionable racial motivations. So whether it's the state or the federal level, we've got to have some degree of justice here. It's been 2.5 weeks. They still haven't charged Zimmerman.
I know.
It's outrageous. They have not released any evidence leading to self-defense. In fact, the police chief has said over and over again, not that he has evidence of self-defense earlier, he said, we just don't have any evidence to say that it's not self-defense. And by the way, when black people shoot white people in this country, the cops always assume that they're innocent and say, well, we don't have any evidence that it wasn't self-defense, so probably the black guy was right in shooting the white guy and killing him. That's always what happens in this country, right? That's always the assumption. So many incredibly questionable assumptions by the cops here, at the very least. Zimmerman is nearly 240 pounds, okay?
Yes.
Now, I know I'm slightly obsessed about the weight topic, but because I'm near that weight, and so I have a perspective on this. If a 17-year-old kid that weighs 140 pounds comes up to me, it is inconceivable that kid is a threat. In-frickin-conceivable. unless he's the most amazing jiu-jitsu master of all time, okay? All you gotta do is push him down, right? You have a 100-pound advantage on him. This bitch Zimmerman, okay, sees the black kid and thinks, oh my God, I know it, he's a danger, calls 911, pursues him. And the kid says, hey, from what we can tell, from what we know, the witnesses and what the cops have said, the kid says, why are you following me? He's freaked out by this weirdo following him, right? He's inside a gated community. He's going to his dad's house. Why is this weirdo following him? Zimmerman then starts a conflict. One of the witnesses apparently hears the kid cry for help. How could Zimmerman possibly have been in enough danger to merit pulling out his gun and shooting the kid in the chest? I mean, even if that scenario were true, which it isn't remotely true, it isn't even 1% true, he would have to be the world's biggest bitch that he was getting his ass absolutely obliterated by a kid who was 10 years his junior and 100 pounds lighter than him, and in a panic had to shoot the kid. Really? I mean, are you that pathetically weak and ridiculous that you go aggressively after a kid? He beats your ass so bad that you feel you got to shoot him? And that's the best case scenario, but that's not what happened. This guy is malicious through and through.
Even if the kid was attacking him, you cannot use lethal force in self-defense. Look, it has to be proportional self-defense. Mm-hmm. If I try to push you, if I push you or slap you, you can't pull out a gun and shoot me. If I pull out a gun first, you can. But that's not what happened. He didn't have a gun. He had Skittles and tea.
What he's saying is very true and makes the police position on this completely and utterly untenable. Because if you get pushed by someone, you're not allowed to shoot them in the head.
Right.
That is not self-defense. Self-defense has to be proportional. So in order for the police to actually believe Zimmerman's case that it's self-defense, they had to believe that that kid with his Skittles somehow presented a mortal threat to Zimmerman. It is inconceivable that they could have believed that. So when you put all this together, no, the cops are, I mean, certainly by all the evidence that we have from the outside, it appears the cops are incredibly crooked and honestly incredibly racist.